Hello and welcome back for another episode of the Hesse Bros podcast. It's your boy Brent Hesse joining me, my brother Luke. L Dog, what is up? Another week goes by in the NFL season, and what another week it was. I mean, I'm sure you're going to be talking about the blowout in Big D, but we've got a lot to talk about. Where are we going to start?
Let's start right there in Dallas. Detroit absolutely destroys them. You know, Dan Campbell wanted to get his revenge after the catastrophe that was last year. Cost us possibly the number one seed overall in the NFC. We weren't going to let that happen. We tried to score with three different linemen during the game, and we even just said, Skipper, go out on the outside, see if you can run a route for us.
It
He did
was
show
the
us a little something.
offensive lineman revenge game, was it not?
Absolutely. And we were doing all sorts of crazy stuff, just running up the score. Of course, David Montgomery gets in the end zone every single time. I don't know why you're not betting it if you haven't been. It's so easy. But of course, it wasn't all great for the Lions. The leader in the Defensive Player of the Year race, Aiden Hutchinson, goes down with a broken leg. And Lions need to figure out their pass rush now. It's the only thing really holding this team back from making a big run this year and possibly winning the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk right about it. We will get into the fun parts, but we'll start with the negative. How big of a loss is that? And what would you do, or what is the best possible solution going forward now without Aiden Hutchinson, the best defensive player for the Detroit Lions?
Well, right now the Lions have already called the Jets about Hassan Reddick, and if we can make something work, he's a great pass rusher. We'd love to have him in the building. And there's obviously been some talks about Crosby or Miles Garrett, but I think that'll cost too much. Brad Holmes isn't going to give up his next two first overall picks with how great he's drafted so far. He's not going to give those away. So I think either go with Reddick or possibly just trade for, a lesser known team, a lesser known D end on a worse team that you can get like for a third or second round pick. And that's kind of what we have to do now. I think it's likely to happen if we don't show any pass rush in our next game coming up here. We're definitely going to make a move for somebody. But besides that, man, even after Hutchinson went down, the Lions looked so good on defense against the Cowboys. And I really do think that there's a good chance that, we don't necessarily need to make a huge splash to still have this defense be able to stop the other team enough where the Lions can just run up the score and get these W's.
Well, the Lions looked incredible, no doubt about it. You talked me into betting Lions by the end of the last Hesse Bros pod as I put a nice parlay down on Lions and Falcons money line was plus money, and that was pretty much a lock by halftime of both games. So pretty fun to watch the Detroit Lions. And my takeaway watching the Detroit Lions was on offense. I think Jared Goff is great. He's a good quarterback, but remove Jared Goff from that offense, the 10 other players on offense for Detroit, there's no better team in the NFL that has a better offensive 10 outside of the quarterback than the Detroit Lions. I'm not saying the Detroit Lions are the number one offense in the NFL because with Goff, then there's some other people that you can include as part of that in that mix. But those 10 players, the offensive line, the skill position guys you can have between the two running backs, Gibbs and Montgomery. Then you've got the tight end Laporta, who had a nice touchdown on the long trick play. And then that wide receiver duo of Amon-Ra and JMO. I mean, I don't see a better 10 in the NFL than the offense. And that's not taking anything away from Goff. I think he's a top half quarterback, but those other guys are all top five in their position or as a group.
Well, Goff has certainly been playing as a top 10 quarterback in the league so far this year. His past three games, he has the highest completion percentage of any quarterback in the league. And so throw Goff in there, I feel like we still have the best offense in the league, especially when you factor in we have one of the best offensive coordinators with Ben Johnson. He always schemes to get guys open. And whenever you got that running back attack with the best offensive line in the league, Goff has all the time he needs to throw, and you know he can make those passes with a clean pocket.
He did a great job, no doubt about it. And Ben Johnson was in his bag with all those plays. And I know that those were just plays that he wasn't going to use against anybody else. Those were just specific Dallas Cowboys offensive lineman revenge plays because you know he's got more coming. They had already the hook and ladder against Arizona that went for a touchdown. So that was just a whole separate section of the Ben Johnson plays that were only specifically to be used in Jerry World Stadium. I have no doubt in my mind that that was the case. So well done for the Lions, dominant performance. Other games to talk about. I think we got to start with the New York Jets. Last on Monday night, the most recent NFL game, have a chance to beat the Bills and move into first place in the division. No Salah, and it looked like they had a chance to do it. Aaron Rodgers does Aaron Rodgers stuff with a Hail Mary again, but then when it comes down to the end, can't get it done. Third straight game, had a chance for a game-winning drive. Third straight loss for the New York Jets. Now they trade for Davante Adams. I was, of course, on the Jets. That was my upset pick of the week, and it comes a little bit short. What do you think of that game?
I just can't believe how many field goals were missed. It looked like a windy day out there, but anything could have happened in that game. It really could have gone either way. And just to see the complete collapse from both kickers, you didn't know what was going to happen at the end of that game. Luckily, the Bills got close enough there at the end where they could have a chip shot, and that was able to take the lead and end up getting it done. But overall, it was a pretty ugly game, to be honest. The offenses couldn't score whenever they were in the red zone, it seemed. And I don't know, the Jets, they need to figure it out. They think they might have with this Devontae Adams trade. It looks like he might be able to get something going there, but you really don't know. The Jets are still just such a wild card in this league. You don't know what you're going to get from them.
For me, it just felt like a massive missed opportunity. You cash in on a Hail Mary at the end of the half, and then you have multiple drives where you can't get in the end zone. And then some of them, it feels like you're about to get in the end zone. And then you walk away with 0 points because you doink field goals off the uprights. And I know it's not all on Rodgers. I think he played good for most of the game, but this was like Rodgers. It had to be Rodgers' moment. You fired the coach. It's pretty much all Rodgers' team now. And what's he do? Throws the interception at the end of the game. And now, because of the Davante Adams thing, it's like, well, now Rodgers has a get out of jail free card. Now he has one more moment. That felt like a must win for Rodgers on Monday night. Didn't win, but then he managed to get a freebie because now he gets to do it again with Davante Adams. Now they have to win this next week. But, it's crazy. Rodgers looks all dejected on the sidelines, throwing Mike Williams under the bus in the press conference Monday night. Then Tuesday morning, he's on the Pat McAfee show with his little smirky smirk, and he's got Davante Adams' family creeping into the background. It's just a wild, wild scene in Jet dystopia land. But yeah, they're 2-4 and in trouble. But apparently, there's just a little bit glimmer of hope from Davante Adams. But that's my takeaway on the Jets. Let's get to another big takeaway from you on this week's games.
Absolutely. See, Brent, real quick, I'd like to play a game with you. Thinking about this Eagles Browns game where Nick Sirianni's over here talking to his own fans about how, they don't know what they're talking about, that he should get fired. I'd like to see from you, B. Hess, who do you think's going to get fired first? Doug Peterson or Nick Sirianni? And if you want to throw in a secondary guy, Mike McCarthy. These three are all going to get canned by the end of the year. It's pretty obvious, but I just
They
want to know
pro-
who you think's going to get fired first because all these teams are just they have too much talent and they're underperforming. So
well,
I'd like
they
to know what you
all
think about
they
that.
all probably could have gotten fired, at least both McCarthy and Sirianni in the offseason last year, and maybe brought in some bigger names. But I'm not going to answer that question just yet because both the Eagles and the Jaguars are big favorites this week. One of them I like to lose, and that will be the answer to that question. So you have to stay tuned as we look to next week's games. But that is definitely a good question. And I do think that the loser, the team that I do expect to lose to a really subpar team next week, the Eagles, if in case you're not curious, Eagles are playing the Giants and the Jaguars are playing the Patriots. And I think one of those two teams does lose this week. And I'll let you know which one it is as we move on in this Hesse Bros pod. But yes, very good question and very prevalent to what we'll be discussing later.
Heck yeah. Also gotta give a shout out to the Ravens. Lamar Jackson beats every NFC opponent he faces. But the Washington Commanders put up a good fight last week. You gotta like what you're seeing out of that team. Still playing one of the top teams in the AFC on the road. That was always going to be a hard game. But yeah, definitely. Or actually, they were at home for that, I believe. But anyways, it was a great game, and it's just exciting to see those two quarterbacks play. Every single Commanders and Ravens game, you got to have that TV on, ready to see what those two quarterbacks are going to do. It's great TV.
Yeah, perfect. That was my number one most watched game in the early slate window. Had the volume on that one as I had all 6 games running right here. Got to make sure you're locked into every single play, but especially that Baltimore and Washington game. That was the feature of the early slate. Both those two, without a doubt, top 5 current candidates for MVP. Which one has a better chance at MVP? Lamar, his third, or Jaden as a rookie?
Definitely Lamar at this point, just because he's already done it for a whole season. You've seen it. The playoff struggles are obviously there, but MVP is a regular season award, and Lamar getting this win over Jane Daniels definitely helps. It's going to be hard for Daniels to keep this up the entire year. And I do see somewhat regression coming, but I still think he's definitely got what it takes to be that offensive rookie of the year. And in a few years, we could definitely be saying he's an MVP of this league. His rushing ability and accuracy, especially if they can keep a rush attack going with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, this offense is going to be ready to go. Jay Daniels is going to be able to find his targets.
Now, last year there was a kind of a same thing with Purdy and McCaffrey, both MVP candidates on the same team, and neither of them really got the votes. Because of that, they kind of took votes away from each other. That could be a possibility with Lamar and Derrick Henry this year. Derrick Henry dominating. Maybe the Ravens' votes are split between quarterback and running back. Jaden Daniels, I think, still a very viable MVP candidate. Even in the loss, was a very impressive game. And like you mentioned, with the Cowboys and the Eagles both looking a little floundering, looks even better for Washington to win that division. Well, my last takeaway before we move on to this week's games, if you want more, go for it. But my last one to talk about was if you woke up early, you saw the Caleb Williams show, and that guy was firing on all cylinders against Jacksonville. Jacksonville loves playing in London. It's their favorite stadium in the whole wide world, even more than their Jacksonville home. And Caleb Williams torched them up and down the field, 4 touchdowns. That Chicago defense is still legit. Put Chicago in my 12-pack last week. I looked like a guru, I have to say. And wow, Bears are a good team. Let me just hear your thoughts on that first, and then I'll ask you the question I really want to ask when it comes to it.
The Bears are a good team, but you're gonna have to wait and see how they come out my 12 pack this year or this week. If they make it, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But there's no doubt they're still at the bottom of the NFC North in terms of talent, and they're the best team. So it's going to be hard for them to make a push to the playoffs, but you'll see if they make it in the 12 pack this week. That was definitely a good win, but anyone can beat the Jags. They're the fraud of the year for sure. I knew it was going to be like that. This team sucks. Trevor Lawrence got paid way too much money for no reason, and their coach is about to get fired. I'll just say it right now. Doug Peterson is going to be the next one to get fired. It's going to be funny when it happens too. They might just drop him off in the old Atlantic Ocean on the way back. Who
They're
knows?
stuck in London for another week. They're playing Patriots right now. Well, on Sunday, they're playing back-to-back games in London. But I have to give you credit. You were right about Jags. I was wrong. However, my main question I want to ask is Chicago's 4-2, Green Bay 4-2, Detroit 5-1, Minnesota 5-0. Those 4 teams have the 4 highest point differentials in the NFL. They have the best margin of victory, best margin in total. Even the Chiefs, who are 5-0, have a worse point total, point margin, point differential, whatever you want to call it, than the Bears and the Packers, because the Chiefs were winning by close margins. Bears and Packers are winning in blowouts when they win, losing in close games. It's never happened before. There's only been a couple of seasons that it's been possible to happen since the playoffs expanded from 12 teams to 14. But it's unlikely, but it is possible that every single wild card team in the NFC is the NFC North, and the NFC North gets all 4 teams in, meaning that only the South, the West and the East all don't get any wild cards, just the division winner makes the playoffs. Is that a possibility at all? Now, I know that they haven't played their division matchups besides only Packers Vikings, so there's still a lot of division matchups to play. And then, of course, somebody's going to have to lose those games. But out of the division, these teams are beating everybody.
You nailed it, Brent. It's just another Sunday, another time for the NFC North to absolutely obliterate their opponents. We saw the Lions, the Packers, and the Bears get huge victories. The other teams didn't stand a chance. And that's a good point, B. Hess. I really do think that there's about a 50-50 chance right now if all three of these teams get in. I mean, the Bears, if they keep ascending the way that they have, I mean, all these teams are on the rise. And even if they each take 3 to 4 losses in the division, you could still see all teams getting to 10 wins. And that might be enough in the NFC. It'll be tough because it'll probably be a tight race, maybe in the NFC South, NFC West, to be able to get, another wild card team in. We're gonna have to see how it plays out, but I think there's a strong likelihood right now, especially if the Bears keep the way that they are, because those other three teams in the North are almost certainly locks, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I kind of hinted at it last week by putting all four of the teams in my top 12 in the NFL. So that is my new keep an eye on that. Maybe, just maybe, that the entire NFC North will make the playoffs. It's never happened before in the NFL that an entire division has made the playoffs. It's really rare when you see three teams in the same division make the playoffs, but it did happen last year with the AFC North. Only the Bengals missed it when the Steelers, Browns, and Ravens all got in. So I think three is almost guaranteed. Four would be remarkable, unheard of, but possible just the way that these four teams are dominating. Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in terms of last week's game. Any other things you wanted to mention before we move on to next week?
Well, we did touch quickly on a possible MVP candidate. My number one MVP candidate from the start of the year, CJ Stroud, just got another W against the Patriots. And I really do think he's going to be able to get it done this year. This team is really good. And when they have Joe Mixon on the field, they are one of those teams that you could say has a better offense than the Detroit Lions. It's not easy to say that, but it's definitely true. CJ Stroud is a better quarterback than Goff. And if they have all their weapons, Collins is going to be out for a little bit. But just having that rush attack with Mixon, he's a great running back. And CJ Stroud is going to be able to light up the defense whenever they have that going for him.
Yeah, Texans are a great team. Of course, they were playing the Patriots, one of the worst teams in the NFL. So hard to, praise them a lot for that victory. But looking as a whole, body of work 5-1, including a nice win against the Bills a couple of weeks back. Definitely one of the top teams in the NFL. I had them in my top five last week. I'm sure you'll have them somewhere in the top five this week. My only other takeaway from this week's games is just it was finally the first week the NFL kind of played to form. You were trying to pitch me upsets last week. I'm the upset specialist. I only had one on the board, and that was Jets over Bills. That one didn't come through. And the only one that actually ever ended up coming through was one of your picks, Colts over Titans. So I'll give you some credit on that one. Although that was a pretty fortunate one as well, as I thought Michael Pittman was going to be on IR when we spoke. And next thing you know, he's catching the game-winning touchdown in the fourth quarter. So shout out Michael Pittman. It looked like he might be on IR. And next thing you know, he's active and catching game-winning touchdowns. Props to the Colts. I don't say that too often. I just don't think the Colts are very good, but they got to win. They're 3-3. AFC's wide open. I just thought it was interesting. It was kind of like the first week we saw the NFL maybe separate a little bit, the good teams from the bad. We've had a lot of crazy upsets, jumbled up teams, but this week things kind of started to thin out. Maybe the race is thinning out a little bit as we move towards not halfway through the season, but getting in that area.
Well, there you have it. I think that's all you need to know from last week. And now getting into this upcoming week, it should be another great week of football. Starting off Thursday night, the Broncos are going to New Orleans as 3-point favorites. Who do you got in this one, BS?
Well, it's the rookie quarterback matchup nobody knew we needed. Spencer Rattler versus Bo Nix. Rattler looked good and bad against Tampa Bay. It was a very odd game because his team scored 27 points, but all 27 came in the second quarter. So outside of one quarter of play, they weren't able to do much against the Buccaneers. I just feel bad for Rattler. He's out his top two targets this week, and Olave and Shaheed both out. So I'll be taking Denver in this game. It's pretty close to a pick 'em. I think, like you said, Denver's maybe a point or two favorite. Maybe that line will move now with Olave and Shaheed both out. I don't know if I'll even be betting this game because it's not the prettiest game, and I don't usually like to bet AFC West teams, but I'll pick the Broncos in that game. Although I'm excited to get a more closer look at Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler because I'll admit Bo Nix has never been the featured matchup in any of the windows he's played in yet in the NFL. I'm usually locked into a different game. And Rattler, I caught a glimpse of him last week. But it'll be good to see both those rookie quarterbacks. My pick would be the Broncos.
Sean Payton is making his return here to New Orleans.
Right?
And so you got to give it to the Broncos here. The Broncos defense is still formidable. And with what the Saints got going on offense right now, all they can rely on is Alvin Kamara to carry this team. That's going to be about the only way that they're going to be able to move the ball down the field. They might be able to get Rattler to have 150 yards, but they're going to need Kamara to have about 200 in both the receiving and rushing game to even stand a chance in this one. I don't see that happening. It's going to be the Broncos and Sean Payton's return back home for sure. I like them -3. I'm going to be betting that one. That's a good one for me.
You like that one? All right. Well, one
Sure.
of the games that I like in the early window is a team you were just talking about, hyping up, the Houston Texans, against a team that we were kind of hyping up. We didn't really talk about them, but they're part of that formidable division, Green Bay. Houston at Green Bay. Sneaky, one of the most intriguing games, not just of the week, but I think of the season in terms of both teams took very similar paths last year. Had quarterbacks that were starting for the first time. Both teams started out just average and then got hot late. Texans and Packers both get hot late in the season, make it into the playoffs in the last week or two, clinching their playoff spot, and then both come up with big time playoff wins. Texans beat the Browns, make it to the divisional. Packers obviously have that monumental win against Dallas that's kind of started this Dallas free fall in Jerry World. And then they both put up pretty respectable performances in the divisional round. And now we're thought of as both sleepers this year. Both teams were popular picks. Where do we make of these teams? Packers 4-2. They had 2 games without Jordan Love. Texans 5-1. Both have good records. This game is very, very intriguing to me in terms of just where these teams are going to go from here the rest of the season.
Now, this is an absolutely great matchup. I'm so excited to watch this one. And I think you're right. CJ Stroud is going to be able to dice this Packers team up. They've given up a lot of yards. They haven't been the strongest defense that they have in previous years. And like I said, with Joe Mixon being back, it's just night and day for this offense and what CJ Stroud can produce. I really think that the Texans are going to be able to get this one done. And especially because Will Anderson is playing as one of the top defensive players in the league right now. Jordan Love is going to get his yards, but a couple sacks, some pressure on him could definitely not bode too well for the Packers. I think that it's going to be a high scoring one for sure, but the Texans are going to get it done. That's a great upset special of the week.
Maybe for you, I think I'm leaning the Green Bay Packers in this one. At home, I like them staying at home after the big win against Arizona last week. They got Romeo Doubs involved, who was kind of a head case the week before. So I like what Jordan Love has been able to do. And this Texans team, they've been winning games, but I need to see them really have a marquee performance. They almost blew a game at home against Josh Allen when he completed less than 33% of his passes. So I'm still waiting for that big time win for the Texans. Of course, the same could be said against the Packers. They've had some opportunities in big games, including in Brazil week 1 and then against the Vikings at home. Haven't gotten it done. But I like the Packers here in this one to knock off the Texans at home in what should be a close game.
There you have it. My next matchup. Let's go back to London here. What are you thinking about this Jags Patriots matchup? Like we said, Doug Peterson not the hot seat, and Drake May showed some promise last week against the Texans. Some rookie mistakes, but also made some pretty good throws. And I think he's going to be ready to fire in London. How do you feel about this one, Brent?
Drake May did look good. He had 3 touchdowns, but he did have 3 interceptions on the other side of the coin. So he turned the ball over a lot. And it's just going to take growing pains. First year quarterback, and it's a roster that's really devoid of talent. He threw his first touchdown pass to somebody that maybe people didn't even know was on the roster, Keyshawn Boutte. And this team just it's going to be hard for them, especially now they're coming over to London. Meanwhile, Jacksonville's already been there for a week getting acclimated. So I don't know if the New England Patriots are going to be able to pull this one off. You think they can?
Oh, I know they will. Like I said, Doug Peterson, on the flight back home, they might just drop him off right in the Atlantic Ocean and say, sayonara, get out of here. I just think that the Jaguars are not a good football team. What Caleb Williams was able to do to him, I think if Drake May does 75% of that, 60% of that,
Yeah,
the
but that
Patriots
was
defense
that
can
was
stop them.
Caleb Williams' sixth start. This is Drake May's second. Maybe he'll do a third of what he did. It'll be his second start, not his sixth. I don't know if you can ask him to do that much. Especially, I think Evan Ingram coming back for Jacksonville first time. He's been back since week 1. That was big. He had a lot of targets, and he's a big safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence. Now it looks like no ETN, but Tank Bigsby's been running well. I think the Jaguars have enough offensively to just be able to outscore New England. I don't think New England's offense can keep up, even if it is against a woeful Jaguar defense.
Fair enough. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but I know the Jaguars' downfall isn't over yet, and we're about to see another chapter to it right here this Sunday. It's going to be pretty funny.
Well, I think we're going to see another chapter in the Nick Sirianni meltdown when they go to MetLife Stadium against the Giants, because that's my upset special of the week is the New York Giants at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. If you recall last year, the Giants were able to beat the Eagles late in the season, was one of the games that collapsed that Eagles team on their way to a first round exit in the playoffs. And this Giants team, I mean, they were a couple plays away from beating Cincinnati. They had a chance to recover a fumble late in that game. If they do, they get the ball down 3. Instead, Cincinnati goes on, scores a touchdown. Giants offense looked pretty bad against a really bad defense. But the week before, they looked pretty good against Seattle. So you just never know what you're going to get. I mean, you didn't expect to not get very much. It's Daniel Jones and the Giants. I understand that. But that defense for the Giants actually is legit. They held Burrow to 17 points and almost less than that, like I mentioned, if it wasn't for a late fumble recovery for that Bengals offense. And the Giants, I just trust them more than I trust the Eagles. The Eagles barely were able to squeak out one against the Browns at home, and the Browns are really bad. The Giants are not good, but they're not as bad as the Browns. I like the Giants at home. I think they're just going to be able to manhandle Philadelphia up front. Jalen Hurts, he's prone to make mistakes when he's under pressure, especially if Thibodeau comes back. Burns was great for the Giants. Dexter Lawrence, that's a really good defense up front for the Giants. And I like them to be able to get the win outright against Philadelphia and maybe send Sirianni crashing and burning.
Yeah, you nailed it right on the head, Brent. That's why my question earlier in the show was actually a trick question. Both these coaches are getting fired on Monday. I like the Giants in this
It
one for
just
sure.
depends on which team pulls the trigger first.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be either Monday at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. What are we looking at here? They're both getting canned this week. But Malik Neighbors is coming back for the Giants. This kid is an absolute superstar.
Yeah, that would help out their offense a ton.
It's gonna absolutely help him out. And we even saw some of the Giants' weapons get involved, Slayton and Wandale in his absence. And now that they're getting going, Daniel Jones can actually throw to a lot of different players. And Tyrone Tracy out of that backfield, he showed something special in that game against the Bengals as well. This offense is starting to heat up, and their defense is here. They allowed the Bengals the fewest amount of points for them for the entire year. That's a good offense, and they have 2 star receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Now you got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I think that they can be able to handle them again. They just saw a team like that last week, and they're going to be ready to go. I like the Giants in this one as well.
Wow. Well, look at Luke firing off some upsets. He likes 3 underdogs already on that Sunday card, and the Texans, the Patriots, and now the Giants. I know both the Lions and the Chiefs have massive matchups this week, and we got to get to those. So let's speed through some of these other matchups. Are there any other ones we need to touch on? Let's try to go quickly so we can really break down Chiefs and Lions in big games this week.
Absolutely. The only other one, I like the Colts a lot this week. Anthony Richardson coming back, only 3-point favorites to the Dolphins. They're still just waiting on their quarterback to get back. I don't believe in the Dolphins right now without Tua Tagovailoa. And so give me the Colts again at home. I feel like they're going to be able to have the juice to be able to beat this team by at least a field goal and push, probably more than that.
Colts, I do agree with. I have been pretty much fading the Colts every week. I think this is the finally the week I will not. I'll like the Colts in that one. Okay, primetime matchups real quickly. Jets at Steelers. That's a wild one. I feel like the Jets need it massively, but the Steelers at home, that's probably one of the tougher tasks the Jets have had so far, having to go to Pittsburgh. What do you think?
I got to ride with the Jets here. They have to show some sort of fire. Like having all this happen to this team in such a short amount of time. They've been in the news both the last 2 weeks as the biggest news, not during the actual games.
Yep.
And they just have to be able to show something. And as long as I can get Devontae Adams on the field running routes, it's going to be a scary duo with him and Garrett Wilson out there, especially with Brees Hall. He ran well, but just didn't have enough against the Bills. I really like this Jets offense, and Justin Fields just hasn't been doing it. I don't know if they've for sure stuck with Fields or if it'll be Wilson this week,
Yeah.
but either way, I just don't like what this Steelers offense is putting out there on a week to week basis. Their running backs look slow, and I think that this has to be the win for the Jets. They absolutely need it. 2-5, you're not making the playoffs coming back from that.
Agreed. I think that this is like a must do or die situation for the Jets. And I've been fading the Jets all season long. I've been the biggest Jets fader there has been, but I was on them last week. And for some reason, I feel like I have to give them one more shot. They might make me look like a fool, but I think I'm on Jets as well. Monday night games, I'm just going to give you my picks real quick. I like the Cardinals to win outright. The Cardinals, I told you last week, inconsistent team. So they had a good win against the 49ers and they had a pretty bad loss against the Packers. Makes perfect sense. They'll come back at home and beat the Chargers, in my opinion. And Ravens versus Bucks on the Monday night doubleheader. That is going to be an intriguing matchup. I just think the Buccaneers secondary is flawed. If Spencer Rattler was able to be able to carve them up in certain spots, Lamar is going to have a field day with them. I don't think the Buccaneers defense is good enough. So give me Ravens and Cardinals in those two Monday night games.
I'm on opposite sides of the spectrum here. I'm liking the Bucks. The Ravens' pass defense has not been the greatest, and Baker Mayfield's absolutely balling out right now with those weapons he's got.
NFL touchdowns.
Yep, I'm taking the Bucks. They put up 51 points last week, and Ravens going on the road as 3.5 point favorites. It's got to be the Bucks. That's the side here, and then I like the Chargers. The Cardinals' offense just shows no life. Call of Duty's coming out here soon, and Kyler Murray.
He already got his, he already got his endorsement there. Now he's back locked in.
He's on the game. He's on the game. Trust me, he's on the sticks, and he's just gonna be doing whatever. He's probably gonna think he's in a video game on on Monday night, but Chargers are gonna get it done. I just really don't like watching these Cardinals right now. It seems like they don't show a lot of fight in their games, and I just really think that the Chargers are gonna be able to get it done this week.
All right, fair enough. Now it's almost time for Lions and Chiefs talk, but I do have one more. We mentioned if the Jets lose, they fall to 2-5, season basically done. That's very similar to another team that's 2-4 that people still might have some belief in, and it's Joe Burrow going on the road to Cleveland, where he's been dreadful in his career. Now Cleveland is probably the worst they've ever been when Joe Burrow's playing them, but I mean, just give me a percent chance. What's the percent chance that Burrow can't get by Cleveland and the Bengals go to 2-5?
I'd put it at about a 20% chance. You gotta think here, the Bengals do not have that good of a defense. And even though Deshaun Watson hasn't been doing anything, he absolutely is terrible at football. If there's any team you can get it going against, you'd think maybe a division opponent that they could scheme up against. that doesn't have a great secondary, this would be his opportunity. He did just lose Amari Cooper too, though, so who really knows?
Maybe that's
I still think
addition
the
by
Bengals get it
subtraction
done.
though. I'm not confident in this game at all just because Burrow is historically so bad against Cleveland. And those trends usually continue to play out when you have a divisional matchup like that. So I'm going to be just observing that one, but obviously be basically a season ender for the Bengals if they can't win against Cleveland. But that's an interesting game, but not as interesting as the Lions at Vikings for first place in the NFC North. And then Chiefs at 49ers, a rematch of the Super Bowl. I mean, just the two juiciest matchups of the weekend. And there are two teams.
Let's go. Fire me up. This is the game we've been waiting for. The Lions. I got my little Lions travel hat on today because we're traveling up to Minnesota. The Lions need to get this W if we want to win this division. If the Vikings are able to take that basically 2.5 point or 2.5 game lead over us in the division, it's absolutely unacceptable. The Lions are going to be ready to go. You'd think maybe there'd be a hangover after such a big game last week. I don't see it happening. This team is built off grit. And the Vikings have a really solid rush defense. I'm so excited to see these two teams clash at the line. See if Demo can get it done early. Jameer Gibbs gets involved. Let's absolutely run it down their throat. I'm so excited to be able to see what the Lions can do here. And when we need it, Amon-Ra St. Brown always goes off against the Vikings. He absolutely torches them. I'm excited to see that. Sam Darnold, that last game he had against the Jets, we'll see if after the bye he's still feeling the same way, but he was not accurate at all in that second half. And the thing is, can the Lions just get a little bit of pressure on him, make him somewhat uneasy? We just paid our big man, Aleem McNeil. Let's get some pressure on the quarterback. It's going to be tough, though, with those weapons they got there. It's going to be a high scoring matchup again. It has to be, but the Lions are going to get it done 35-28.
So there's three really just big images, thoughts that run through my head when I think of this matchup. You pretty much touched on them all, but I'm going to just expand on them. First one is all those images of the Detroit Lions offensive linemen trying to catch touchdowns and have plays last week. So yes, the Lions obviously they were ready. They were up for that Cowboys game. It's impossible to be up at the same intensity level every single game. There was extra fuel to that fire for the Dallas win, no doubt about it. That you cannot argue against it. Now can they get up 2 weeks in a row for what really should be an even more important matchup because you're on the road at the only team that's ahead of you in the division. Could be this game could be the difference in who gets the 1 seed and who gets the 5 seed, which is massive. It's not just a 1 versus a 2 or anything like that. It's a 1 seed versus the 5 seed potentially. So can they still get up to that same intensity level? That makes me think not. But what makes me think they could is the next image in my mind. And that was in the locker room when what Dan Campbell said after the game, where he said, nobody is pulling away from this team. Everybody's getting tighter and closer together. And this team really does have a special bond. And then even once Campbell was able to break it down and, give the credit to Brian Branch and to Jared Goff, who both played excellent. Then Goff says, no, we're definitely not pulling away. I want to give the game ball back to you, Coach Kneecaps. And Campbell, I mean, that was a beautiful moment, really. And so that just makes me think that this team is a little bit different. Maybe they are able to overcome that emotional ride of the last game, the loss of Hutchinson, the absolute success on the field. And they are able to get up for what is just as massive a game. And then the third moment, the third image that's in my head right now is Sam Darnold pumpkin ball and all the inaccurate throws he was making in the second half, the last time the Vikings were on the field. For the first 4.5 games Sam Darnold's played this year, he's looked like an MVP candidate quarterback. He's looked like a Pro Bowler, a guy that warranted a top 3 pick in this league when he was drafted. Then in the last 2 quarters of play, he's looked like the guy that's bounced around the league for the last 5 years that hasn't been able to be a consistent starter. So if it's Sam Darnold pumpkin ball and it's Lions still being able to play at that highest intensity level, then I like the Detroit Lions, and I think two beats one. So I've got three images in my head. Two of them bode well for the Lions, and I'll take the Lions on the road against the Vikings.
Love to see it be Hess. And another quick point you got to throw in is Cam Akers just got traded back to the Vikings. And what that tells me is Aaron Jones is not ready to go at all. If the Lions' rush defense, which is one of the best in the league, can stymie this Vikings rush attack, it can be absolute go time whenever it comes to getting Sam Darnold down on probably long third down attempts, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and that's going to be all the difference it takes. It would help out a lot if they can get down to that 3rd and 2, which I don't know if they'll be able to against this Lions rush defense with the running backs they're putting out there. That's why you got to be riding with the Lions this week, the best team in the NFC.
And now we'll talk Super Bowl rematch. It's Chiefs going into Santa Clara against the 49ers. The Kansas City Chiefs are underdogs against San Francisco. Mahomes absolutely loves being an underdog. He's 10-3 against the spread as an he's 10-3 outright. He's 10-3 just straight up when he's an underdog against the spread, and he's like 11-1-1 against the spread when he's an underdog. So Mahomes and the Chiefs, they use that as motivation. They know what people are talking about. They were underdogs against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. They won that. They were underdogs against the Ravens in the AFC Championship. They won that. They were underdogs against the Bills in the divisional. They won that. They were underdogs in the Super Bowl the year before against the Eagles. They won that. The last four times the Chiefs have been underdogs, they have won. And here we go again. Now, of course, we talked about it the last time the Chiefs played. Juju Smith-Schuster's off the street going for 100 yards. Kareem Hunt's off the street going for 100 yards. These guys have just been cut from other teams, not even playing football. And here they are coming in for Kansas City and just popping off. And that's probably going to have to be the case again. But I see no reason why it won't be. Chiefs are off a bye. Andy Reid is a mastermind when he gets extra time to prepare. I don't want to take anything away from San Francisco. I think they're a great team. They're 3-3. They're obviously much better than the record. Vegas thinks so. They're the favorite against the Chiefs. And I think so. I had them in my top 6 last week. I still think they're in my top 6. They had a solid, decent enough win on Thursday. They are off a little bit of extra rest as well. But I just think that this Kansas City Chiefs team is going to do what they always do, and that's find a way. When you've got the best quarterback, the best coach, and the best defense, and the best tight end, they're going to win this football game. So give me Kansas City 27-24.
Brock Purdy's going to be ready to get some revenge. This entire 49ers team has been thinking about how close they were in that Super Bowl. And both these teams have been dealing with injuries. And even though the Chiefs have lost more players, I think that not having McCaffrey on this team makes this 49ers team a lot worse, especially when it comes to finishing in the red zone and picking up important third downs. I think the Chiefs defense is going to be able to stop Jordan Mason. Not a whole lot of teams have been able to, but the Chiefs have a solid rush defense. I'm with you, B. Hess. Give me the Chiefs. Kareem Hunt is ready to rock. It seems like he might not be a huge downgrade from Pacheco, just because it seems like, he's been like transported into a younger body, a more quick body, like he just reincarnated in the Chiefs like he was in his 3rd year in the league. And this guy is ready to rock. You got to go with Mahomes and Andy Reid on the road here as underdogs. This is probably the bet of the week. I don't see the 49ers being able to get it done with what I've seen, especially in the clutch this year. They haven't been able to close games, and we know Mahomes is usually able to get that done whenever it's close. So you got to go with the Chiefs here.
I think so too. It might be one of the weakest offenses the Chiefs have had, but it's the weakest defense the 49ers have had in the last several years just because of all their injuries. But it's going to be a great game. Lions and Chiefs both underdogs on the road against great competition. And me and you are both, well, I mean, you knew I was going to take the Chiefs and I knew you were going to take the Lions, but you didn't know I was going to take the Lions. I definitely didn't know you were going to take the Chiefs. So we're both on those Chiefs and Lions as underdogs this week. And now let's get into a 12-pack. I'm thirsty, but it's my turn just to watch you take down a 12-pack, Luke. Let's hear your top 12 teams in the NFL after 6 weeks going into week 7.
Let's get the 12 pack cracking. 12 pack is open. Let's go.
Now, just
All
a
right.
reminder, my 12 pack was basically flawless last week. Nobody in my 12 pack lost except for Washington, who was playing against a team higher in the 12 pack than them in Baltimore. So it's going to be hard to follow up my 12 pack, but let's see what you got.
All right, let's get it started off just like you did last week. The Chicago Bears. I wouldn't have had them in my 12 pack last week, but after what they did against the Jaguars, they've got to be in there. Like I said, I do see them as a possible playoff team. Caleb Williams is playing great. It's going to take a loss to bring them out of the 12 pack. This is a pretty solid team. They'll start us off. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sneak into the 12 pack. Baker Mayfield, like I said, is absolutely balling out, putting up 51 points. They got to be in there. And then moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, the team that beat the Bucks. You got to have the Falcons just a little bit ahead of the Bucks. I like what they're doing on defense, and this team's still trying to figure everything out, and they're getting wins in the process, coming off of 3 straight divisional games against all their divisional opponents. That's looking like a divisional winner right there. Give me the Atlanta Falcons at number 10. Here at number 9, the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen looks like he could be an MVP. Looks like he can't be an MVP. They have a lot of different things going on in this offense. They trade for Amari Cooper. I'm excited to see what that looks like. This Bills team, though, I just don't see them as an upper echelon team like some people might. They rely too much on Josh Allen, and they just don't have the weapons, especially whenever they're having to rely on rookie running backs, even though they're playing great. James Cook gets back, they'll be a little bit better, but throw them in at number 9. At number 8, give me the commies. This is just a fun team to watch. You gotta you gotta like what Jaden Daniels is doing out there. And this is a team that's poised to win their division as well, just like me and Brent called. I'd love to put them higher, but there's just much more established teams just above them. I was actually flip flopping between them and number 7, the 49ers. The 49ers, they're a good team. We just talked about them, but like I said, Christian McCaffrey not being there, it's a different team. And it's hard to say that they're the team to beat in the NFC anymore just because of that fact. They don't have one of the greatest players in the league running for him right now, and we never know when he'll be back. And then um,
Number
coming
6.
in at number 6, we got the Green Bay Packers. Now this is a team that has definitely been playing well, but I have to have them just one spot below the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, like I said, are going to beat the Packers this week, and just what CJ Stroud's been doing, he's he's really just on a different level. Whenever it comes to his quarterback play, I really like what he's doing with Joe Mixon back there. This is a really scary team, and they're going to be slotted in there at number 5. Now, BS, tell me what you think of those before I get into my bottom or my top 4.
Well, I thought you were just, you didn't have enough time to do research and you said Brent's list was perfect last week and we're just going to use the same list because that's how it was going. I shouldn't have even said anything beforehand. Bears, Bucks, Falcons, Bills. That was my 12 through 9 last week. So yeah, I was seeing the future. I knew exactly what was going on. I was perfect. Then we had Commanders, 49ers, and Packers. I had a different order last week. I had 49ers ahead of I had a 49ers ahead of Washington, and you did not like that last week. Now you are agreeing with me. But yeah, those 3 teams in some order I agree with. And then I had the Texans at number 5 last week. So yeah, I mean, how could I disagree with this list? It looks almost spot on to the same one that I wheeled out last week. I'm excited to see where you've got these last 4 teams. Obviously, we know who they are, but what order are they going to be in?
Yeah, and like you said, BS, the teams that you put in your 12 pack were winning last week, and I agreed with most of that. I feel like at this point in the year, we can kind of have somewhat of a consensus. It just matters, which teams take it up a notch and which ones are a little bit lower. And that's why right here at number 4, I'm going with the undefeated Minnesota Vikings. This team is really solid, but we've seen it for 5 weeks. We haven't seen it for a previous year. We don't know, will their quarterback crumble? Can they keep up this attack that they've shown for the first 5 weeks? I don't trust them as much as I do these top 3 teams. Coming in at number 3, the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's gonna always be tough to beat this team, especially with the way Derrick Henry is running the ball. This guy is an absolute beast. He looks like he could be in his 4th year, except for he's actually going on 30, and he has the knowledge and the ability to absolutely run over a dude or take it to the house. The Ravens are just such a good team, but they do not touch these top 2 teams, BS. The Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll give you the nod on this one, BS. The Chiefs can still be the number 1 team in the league for now. They might even go undefeated all the way until they meet the Detroit Lions in the Super
Wow.
Bowl. If you really want to go there, they might do it, but I'm not worried. I'll just keep saying the Lions are number 2 until the Chiefs get a loss. But at this point, I'll give the Chiefs the nod here. Lions at number 2. Obviously, you all know how we feel about these 2 teams. And what do you feel about this 12 pack, those top 4, BS? Would you have a different order?
Well, it's very tough because my order last week, I had just the Vikings 3, Ravens 4. Ravens look great. Vikings were on bye. It's hard to penalize a team on bye, but the Ravens look great beating Washington. It was a touchdown win, but they looked like they were in control the whole second half against a good team that we both respect in the Commanders. So I have zero problems with this list. Besides, I still think 49ers, you got to have them ahead of the Green Bay Packers, but we'll see this week what the 49ers can do against the Chiefs. So you've got it number 7 versus number 1 and number 2 versus number 4 when it comes to Chiefs, Niners, and Vikings versus Lions. Obviously, those are 2 massive games. Plus, you've got 5 versus 6 and Texans, Packers. So yeah, there's 3 massive games this week, no doubt about it. And against that's 6 of the 7 best teams in the NFL all facing off this week. So a huge weekend of NFL. Great 12 pack, Luke. I mean, almost as delicious as the one that I had last week. Wow, you're doing something right.
I'm with it, BS. And just like that, here's my first of the 12 pack down as far as these beers go. And I'm going to save the rest of the 11 for Saturday morning when the Hoosiers play the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Let's go, Hoosiers. Stay undefeated. What are your picks for this week, BS?
Well, I've got a lot of them. We just talked about 2 underdogs that we both like, Lions and Chiefs. So those are 2 that I'm going to be riding with. Also love the Giants against the Eagles. And then on Monday night, Cardinals over the Chargers. And they're throwing balloons for me because they know that I always win. I'm just a winner, winner, winner. Yeah, throw those dollar bill signs up at me next. So yeah, those are my 4 underdog upset picks of the week. And that's what I'll be riding as I watch the Chiefs beat the 49ers. It's not a Super Bowl this week, but it is still going to be a fun, fun victory.
Yes, sir. I'm riding with the Patriots, Texans, Giants, Chiefs, and the Buccaneers are my biggest picks. And of course, the Lions. Throw the house on them. The Lions are going to be able to get another W. They love winning football games. Well, BS, you got anything else for them?
No, that's pretty much it. Great 12 pack, Luke. Great slate of games. Go Chiefs, go Lions. Hopefully, they're still top 2 of the 12 pack next week, but they've got some tough tasks ahead of them.
There you have it. Thanks for following along with us, watching through this extended version of the Hesse Bros podcast. It was an absolute blast to talk with you, B. Hess, and let's watch some football.
Yes, sir, indeed. Thanks for watching, like, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the Hesse Bros podcast.